A few episodes ago we talked about Blitz.js, which is a full-stack JavaScript framework. Unfortunately, Blitz.js is still in beta. It's going to be in version 1.0 sometimes in April, so you can maybe try using it then. But in the meantime, if you want to build a full-stack JavaScript application using Next.js, you can actually just use Prisma with it, because Blitz.js is based on Next.js and Prisma. And they're both beta tested, so Next.js is used very much by developers and loved very much by developers, and the same thing goes with Prisma.io. So in this episode I'm just going to show you how you can integrate Next.js with Prisma to get your full stack JavaScript application going. So what is Prisma? Actually, Prisma 2. As I heard, Prisma 2 is much different than Prisma 1, so we are going to, of course, be using that. Prisma is next generation ORM for Node.js and TypeScript, which actually just means that it's going to give you a nice API for you to interact with your database and also to create your database, as you will see in this video. So Prisma helps developers build faster and make fewer errors with an open source ORM for PostgreSQL, MySQL and SQLite. We are going to be using SQLite in this video. I'm not going to spend much time introducing Prisma to you, but we are just going to start developing stuff. First of all, we are just going to make a fresh install of Next.js, and then we are going to integrate Prisma in it and create a little movie app, of course. We're just going to list the movies. I'm going to show you how you can add the movies and how you can get single movie page. So first of all, we are going to create a fresh installation of Next.js, and to do that you are just going to do npx create next app. The project name is going to be Prisma Next. And now we just wait a little bit for everything to get installed and downloaded. Okay, so now we are just going to go cd into Prisma Next. And we are actually going to install Prisma. So you do npm install -d. So it's going to be a developer dependency Prisma. After that, we are going to install Prisma client. So you do npm install @Prisma client. Okay, so now that this is done, there is one more command that we are going to run, and that is going to be npx Prisma init. So we want to initialize Prisma in our Next.js application. So now we are going to open up our project inside of our code editor. Inside our code editor, alongside with normal Next.js files and folders, you will have this Prisma directory, which includes schema.prisma file. And you also have this .env file in which you can set up your database URL. It also has some documentation to explain what this file actually does. So first of all, we are going to change the provider, which is going to be SQLite, not PostgreSQL. So it used to be like this. So you just change it to SQLite. And then you would need to actually create a database. Since we are using SQLite, the database is just going to be a file. So we can create it by doing a new file, and we are going to call that file database.db. Okay, you can close that file. We are not going to be touching it anymore. Next thing you need to do, you need to define where your file lives in your .env file. So to do that, we are just going to set it to be something like file prisma database.db. Save this. Okay. We can also save schema Prisma, but nothing is going to happen here because we still haven't created our model. And what are models? Well, models are just a description of your data types, which are going to be migrated to the database. So here you will define your database tables. Our model is just going to be called model movie. And this is something actually very similar to something like Ruby on Rails, Laravel, or even October CMS. If you ever worked with it, you would have your migrations and you can migrate those migrations inside of your database. And in that way, you will create the fields in your database that your users can fill out inside of your application. So first of all, in our model movie, we want to have a few fields. So the first field is going to be an ID field, which is going to be an integer. And we are going to do this ID, and then we are going to set its default value to be auto incrementing. So you do auto increment because this is just going to be our ID field, and whenever you add something to your database, this number is going to auto increment automatically. So the next thing is title. So we are creating a movie. The movie has a title and it's going to be of type string. The year is going to be of type integer, and description for the movie is also going to be a string. And we are also going to create a slug for the movie because we are going to need that slug so that we can access our single movie page through slug, not ID. So slug is going to be string also. Okay, so we created our model. Next, what we need to do, we need to create a migration from it and migrate it inside of our database. So as you can see, if you click on your database right now, it's just an empty file. Now, if we go to our terminal and run npx prisma migrate dev, we need to add a name of our migration. So I'm just going to say first migration. Press enter. And now our database is in sync with your schema. So now what we can do, we can run something called Prisma Studio. So you do npx Prisma Studio. And this is going to give you a very nice user interface in which you can actually see your databases. So you do npx Prisma Studio. It's going to automatically open up inside of your browser, like it did for me right here. And as you can see, we have models, and all models, we only have this one called movie. If you click on a movie, you can see our fields. So ID, title, year, and description. So let's fill out those movies. So the title for the first one is going to be Fight Club. The year is 1999. Description, you can add whatever you want here, and the slug is going to be Fight Club. And let's add just a few more movies. I'm going to do that behind the scenes. Okay, so now we have our 3 movies set up. We are just going to save those changes. And now our database is filled up with some data which we can display in our Next.js application. Okay, so now I'm going to quit out of Prisma Studio by doing Ctrl+C and run Next.js server. So npm run dev. Once this has been run, you can go to localhost 3000 and check out your application. As you can see, this welcome to Next.js screen looks a little bit different because behind the scenes I added some styling inside of global CSS and home module CSS. You can see all of those files on GitHub. The link will be in the description below. For now, we are not going to concern ourselves with it because we are actually just building this application. We are not going to concern ourselves with the styling. So I'm just going to rename this to be movie list. We are doing this inside of index.js file, which is inside of our pages, right? So it's going to be called movie list. We are going to remove everything from main. So this is the default code that you would get with Next.js. And I'm also just going to delete the footer. And I'm going to format my document because I don't like the current formatting. And that's about it. Okay, so now if we take a look at our web page, we don't see anything because we don't have anything here. Okay, so let's just try to display some movies first statically, and then we are going to get them from Prisma. So first of all, what you need to do, we are just going to export async function, get server-side props. We did this a million times in our Next.js series. Then I'm just going to define some data right here. It's going to be very simple. I'm not going to waste too much time on it, so I'm just going to say const data, and I'm going to say ID1 title and another title, just to see how this works and how it's going to change when we add Prisma to the mix. And of course, we wanna return some props, so you do return props, and we are just going to return the data. Of course, we need to accept that data at the beginning of our function. So right here, data, and here we can display this list. We are going to use UL tag for that. As you can see, I'm getting my styles from that movie list. So if you don't know what this does, this is going to reference styles that are coming from home module CSS, and in home module CSS we have something called movie list, right? So this is just our styling, and in it I'm going to map our data. So I'm just going to say data.map item, and then here we are going to open up an li tag, which is of course going to have a key, which is going to be item ID .id, and here we are just going to display item title. Okay, save this, check it out in the browser. Cannot read property map of undefined. Let's try to just refresh this page. Okay, so now it works. We had to refresh the page because this is getting this data is coming from server-side props. So whenever you change something here, you actually have to refresh your page so that the server can do its thing. Okay, so this works. We are just getting title and another title. Great. Now we want to get our movies displayed on this page. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, what you need to do is you need to import Prisma client, and you import Prisma client by doing import Prisma client from Prisma client. Great. Now you have to new up that Prisma client, and you do that by doing const Prisma is going to be new Prisma client. And now we have our Prisma client newed up. Great. Now we have access to this variable that we just defined called Prisma, and we can use it to get our movies. And so how do we get those movies? We of course need to get them inside of get server side props, because Prisma works on your server. So it works on the back end, it doesn't work on your client side. So to do that, all you need to do is define a variable which we are going to be calling movies, const movies, and we await, and then we do Prisma movie, because this is the name of our model, Prisma.movie, and we just do find many. And that's about it. Now all we need to do is change these props a little bit, so the data in this case is actually going to be movies and not just this data that we defined right here. So we can remove this, and as you can see, instead of fetching some data from our API, we are actually calling Prisma and communicating with our database to find our data. So we save this and check this out in the browser. And as you can see, now we are getting Fight Club, American Beauty, and Big Lebowski. Now, of course, we have some other data in our movies, except just for the title. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm just going to add this in our li. So we are getting movie title, year, and description. Save this and check it out in the browser, and as you can see, this now works. Fight Club, American Beauty, Big Lebowski, we are displaying all of those. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, we want to add a movie to our database. As you will see, this is also pretty easy to do with Prisma. So first of all, I'm just going to import useState from React. We are going to use state from React because we are going to be needing it for our form. So we are going to use our state in here. We are just going to do const form data and set form data, which is going to be using useState. and we are expecting an object right here. So this is going to be the data that is coming from our form. Next thing, I'm going to add that form right here. You don't have to worry about this too much. It's going to be available for you on GitHub. Let me just go through this code so that we don't have to write everything by hand. So you're defining a placeholder for your fields, which in this case is going to be a title. You have to define a name because this is going to be the name of the data that is coming in. And on change, we are setting form data, and we are getting this object right here, and we are adding whatever we get from this field to our form data. And we do that for pretty much every field except for year. We do that also for the year, but you have to be careful for the year to add this plus symbol right here, because this is going to turn our string into a number, and Prisma is expecting a number for the year, so we need to send it a number, because if you don't, Prisma will break and nothing will work. And that's about it, right? So this is our form. If we save this right now, go to the browser, it looks something like this, but it's calling this function save movie, which we still didn't define. So let me just show you how the form works first. I'm just going to go to my browser, to my code editor, and I'm going to create a function called save movie. So this is our save movie function. It's just accepting an event. It's preventing default so that our page won't refresh, and then we are calling the logging out form data. So let's see how this works. If we go to our browser, as you can see now, we can see the form. I'm going to open up our console, refresh it. So there are two children with the same key. That's weird. Item.id. Okay, so we are going to ignore this for now. Let's just try to add something to our form. This should be a number. And if we click add movie, as you can see right here, we are getting that movie. Let me click it again. Make it a bit bigger. So as you can see, we are getting the title, the year, the description, and the slug. So these are all the fields that we want to add to our database once somebody clicks add movie. Of course, this doesn't work just yet because all our save movie method is doing is just displaying the form data. So let's transform this save movie method to something else. We are going to leave prevent default, and this should be actually an async function called save movie. And now in that function, what we need to do is, of course, first prevent default, then we do a response, and we are going to be using fetch. So we do await fetch, and we are going to go to the route called API movies. Now I'm going to explain what we are doing just a little bit later. Let's just create this. The method is going to be post, and we are going to send the body, which is going to be JSON stringify form data. And then we are just going to wait for this response to finish. So we are going to return response.json. Okay, save this. Now, as you can see, we are calling a route called API movies. Now, if you go to your pages, you will see that you already have an API folder with hello.js in it. This is our API route, and these routes work only on the backend or on the server side. And as you can remember, as I said before, Prisma also works on the server side. So what we are doing right here is we are sending this data to this server side route, which is going to be called movies in our case. And there we are going to call Prisma again and set that data inside of our Prisma database. So let's create a new file here, which we are going to call movies.js. And in that file, you will add export default. So let me just close this. Export default, we are getting a request and a response. And we also need to import Prisma client and new it up. Okay, we do Prisma client from Prisma client and then new Prisma client. Great. Now we are getting a request to this route. This request is going to carry a body in it, like we just sent right here. So we are sending a body with form data. So we are expecting body from this request. So if I do const data equals, we want to parse.json, json.parse request body. So this is the data that is coming from our form. Next thing we need to do, we need to add that data to our database. So how do we do that? You just do const created movie. This is going to be the name of our variable. We do await prisma.movie.create. And then you just send in the data that you're getting right here. So you just do data. And you just want to respond with JSON created movie. So response is going to be JSON created movie. This should be movie, not movies. Okay, save this. And this should actually be everything that we need to do so that we can use our form to add movies to our database. So let's see if this works. We go to our browser, refresh this page, of course. And now I'm going to add a title of a movie, which can be Matrix. The year is going to be 2000 actually. Let's just put it 2000. You can add anything to the description and the slug is just going to be Matrix. And now we click add movie. Okay, we didn't get any errors, but as you can see, our movie is not showing up right here just yet. But if we refresh the page, as you can see, the Matrix is added. Matrix movie is not getting added right away because we didn't handle that in our code. So let's just handle it quickly right now. So if we go to index.js file, we are going to define another use state right here, which is going to be called movies, const movies, and set movies. Okay. Then we are going to use state, and here we are actually going to say data. So our movies are, our initial movies are going to be the data that we are getting from server-side props. Of course, this will not work. This will throw an error because here we are mapping through data, not movies. So let's just change that and say movies. And there is one more thing that we need to do. So when somebody clicks on add movie, we want to add Matrix to these movies right here. So how do you do that? Well, it's just one liner. So below prevent default, you just do set movies. We are destructuring this array and adding whatever we get from data. So when somebody clicks on that, we should set up movies before we actually add movie to the database, and that movie should show up on our page. So let's just save this, go to the browser. Let's test this out once again. Let me refresh it. And I'm just going to add it like this. And the slug is going to be test. We click add movie. And as you can see, our movie is added automatically here. And if I refresh the page, it's going to stay on this page. Let me just talk a little bit more about these keys error that we are getting right here. You would get that error even if this works okay, because when you add a movie and that movie is in this list, as you can see, we are not defining an ID here. So you would get an error that this last movie doesn't have a key on it because it doesn't have an ID. So in that case, what you would need to do is use something like UUID or some other library to create automatically ID keys. And actually this is a best practice, because if you read the documentation for React and best practices, you should actually never use IDs for the keys. just because situations like this, right? So when using something like a UUID library or any other library similar to it, they are going to generate the keys for you and you don't have to worry about this. But okay, we are going to ignore that. But for now, we want to link those movies to a single movie page. And of course, to do that, we need a link. So we are going to go down here. Actually, we are first of all going to import link from next link. And then we are just going to add a link to a movie. So we are going to add it below item description. Just going to paste it in here. So we are getting movies and we are sending the item slug. So for example, if we click on matrix, we should go to the URL movies/matrix. Okay, if I save this and go to the browser, you can see those links right here, and in this in this down left corner of the screen, if I mouse over it, you can see movies test, movies matrix, movies Big Lebowski, and so on. So we want to get that URL when user clicks on it. Of course, if I do it right now, it's going to get 404 because nothing exists there to handle that behavior. So what we need to do is we need to create a slug for our movies. And we are going to do it by going to pages. And in pages, I'm going to create a new folder called movies. And in that new folder, I'm going to create a new file, which is going to be called slug.js. So this is going to be our dynamic link, our dynamic page. And if you don't know anything about that, please check out my Next.js tutorials. We go in depth with dynamic linking. So this is going to be our slug. And in that slug, first of all, we are just going to set up some scaffolding. I'm just going to paste this in here. So we are calling the Prisma client. We are calling head styles. Styles are coming from home module.css. We are also adding a container. Movie title is going to go right here for the title of the page, and the movie title that is going to display on the page is going to go right here. Okay, and also I defined get server-side props because we are also going to use them, and I defined context. So from context, we are going to get this actual slug of the page. So how do we create this page? Well, it's going to be very easy. So we are going to do const slug that we are getting from context query. So when you get to this page, you have access to context. Context has a query object in it, and that query object will have a slug property. And then we can use that slug to find the movie that we want to display. So I'm going to say const movie await Prisma movie. So we are accessing our movie model again. And now we are going to use the find first function. Find first. And in that function, we are going to say where slug is equal to the slug that we are getting from the context. So it's going to find our movie in our database by slug. And then we just want to return this. Return props, and we just return movie. Of course, to display anything for that movie, we need to send it right here, movie. And now for the title of our page, we can just do movie title. So this is going to be the title that is going to display on the tab in your browser, and this is going to display on our actual page. You can of course do something like p movie description. Okay, save this, and now this should actually work, I think. I hope. So let's refresh this and click on Fight Club. And as you can see, we get to the page. This is the title of the movie, this is the description of the movie, and this right here is the title that you get in the tab from your head tags. And that's about it. So this is the basic example of how Prisma works and how you can use Next.js and Prisma right now to create a full stack Next.js application. Okay, so this has been it for this Let's Check Out video. Remember, everything we did here will be available for you on GitHub. The link will be in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.